So hello and welcome, I'm Frederick Dunn and this is the way to be. That's right, that's a queen honeybee in my queen pipe. Now this video is going to cover a lot of ways to collect queens and redirect swarms or keep your bees from absconding from a colony, from a hive that they're already in. So we're starting right off with a swarm that I'm installing with a bucket here. And because it's the second week of August, we can't play games here. We really have to take care of things. I want these bees to go in. I want them to stay in this hive. And this one had just a residual group of bees left over, and so they had been queenless for a long time. So once I put the bucket in front with the queen excluder on top of it, I collected the queen from the queen excluder, and I also made sure that the bees were already going in before I installed the queen. So now the queen walked in on her own, but we have to keep her from getting away over the next few days. Also check your pipe to make sure you didn't leave a queen behind. So there's a lot of reasons for doing this. So I'm putting this landing board queen includer on the hive. The bees will continue to go in because now the queen's pheromone is inside the hive. Now if this were an unmated queen, if I had any doubts about the fact that this is a queen in production, I would remove this again in about 3 days. So what I'm going to be looking for is not only this initial move in, but I want to see in the coming days that they are bringing in pollen and resources and that they're starting to provision this hive. So I can tell you in advance, this was recorded on the 15th. Today is August the 17th. And they did stay, so now I have already removed this entrance guard or queen includer. And by the way, if you're looking for where you can get it, this is not an affiliate, but this is coming from Dadant, D-A-D-A-N-T. They're the only ones I know of that provide this particular landing board style queen includer. So we pay attention to the bees, and they of course are fanning. Now, while I'm doing that, there was a swarm from my top bar hive, and I always zip over when I see a swarm just in the off chance I can catch the queen when she's leaving, and I did. So I caught her with another queen pipe. So here's the thing, top bar hive, odd configuration, so you can't just put a landing board queen includer on that. I took this queen away because what's going to happen now? Well, they're flying off, they're headed for a bivouac location. So once a swarm leaves the hive, they of course assemble someplace nearby, an intermediate location where they regather, and then they go off to their final destination. But once you remove the queen, as I did here in the queen pipe, then they're going to get confused. They're going to search the air. They're going to swirl all over this apiary, and they're not going to find their queen because here she is in a nice cool spot inside. And I'm going to hold her here while I decide what to do, because I do have a couple colonies that are queenless. So, because I'm really not stopping their instinct to swarm, because what's going on inside this top bar hive is they have built already replacement queen cells. There are queens in them. They're likely capped. And in an upcoming video, I'm going to show you how to carve those out and make a selection, because I need their numbers to go down. These top bar hives are actually pretty small. This one holds 15 top bars, and they filled it out. So there's not a lot more I can do to expand it. And there they are, of course, flying around this tree, and they're not landing. I wonder why they're not landing. Because they haven't found their queen. And if they can't find the queen, they can't decide to create a bivouac, a temporary location. So what they're going to do, and I've done this many times before, is they're just going to return to the hive. So what I've done, by removing the queen, we're going to restore this workforce. Because let's face it, at this time of year, in August, we don't want to lose that many bees from a single colony, even though it's really busting at the seams with population. This is one of the triggers why they want to reproduce right now. But I don't have any more hives to put them in. So, as I mentioned already, I did find 2 other hives in my apiary that were queenless. And so I introduced that queen into that hive, but I didn't do it yet. We have to make sure that they all come back here. And this will buy us some time because we're about 12 days out on average before they would attempt to swarm again. And so that lets us kind of make a game plan. So I highly recommend that you get these very inexpensive queen pipes or some other queen cage collection system and keep them in your pocket of your bee jacket, because when a swarm is leaving the hive, you have an opportunity, because the others are boiling out, they're flying directly into the air, but most often the queen will come out after the swarm has started to leave, and she will scoot around on the landing board or the face of the hive for a few seconds. You really have to be there for it. She'll scoot around for a few seconds, and then that queen pipe is really handy because I can put it straight over the top of her, even if other bees are with her. She sees nothing but light through that clear piece of cheap plastic, and she moves right into it. And then you just put the sponge in place, and then of course you have the queen. And more than that, you have time. So without the queen's pheromone, some of these bees may drift to other hives because they decided to swarm, but the bulk of them will of course return to this top bar hive. I like top bar hives. They've been great. This is just my second year with them, and I have two, and they're both full to the max with comb and resources and the population of the bees. So unlike a Langstroth stack where you can just keep adding supers, once you build a horizontal hive, whatever size you make it is going to be the limiting factor. So I recommend, if you're getting a top bar hive or you're building one yourself, make it bigger than it needs to be. At the very worst, you'll have more storage area for your equipment. So very simple to make. And what we're seeing now is, of course, what we call a pheromone echo chamber. These workers are all fanning their Nasonov glands, they're sending out that scent, and they're retracting the workers that have swarmed out. And so they're all over the face of it. Now, if you weren't home, if you weren't in the apiary when this happened, you obviously can't do this method. So this is for the backyard beekeepers with time in their hands who just might be in the bee yard when this occurs. And so what happens is, this happened on the 15th and then on the 16th, and I cautioned people on Friday that the swarm risk is very high. And why would that be? Because there's a lot of nectar coming on. There's goldenrod, boneset, they are out there on Joe Pye weed, ironweed, and every hive is just fanning to the best of their ability to dry out the honey that's in there. And in concert with that, they are building their population at a rapid rate, which means they have resources, they have a surplus population, and it's time to swarm. Now, we don't want to just let them go. Their chances of surviving on their own when they head out into the woods or wherever they're going, very low. So let's remove the queen and restore the workers and buy ourselves some time. So of course, the sound of the bees is picking up. It's a little louder now because more and more of them have decided they can't find the queen, and they're going to move right back in. Something else I'd like to share with you. If you're seeing an abundance of bees like this in your apiary and you want to create your own new colony of bees and your bees aren't currently swarming, you could actually put a mated queen in a queen clip, hang her from a tree branch nearby, and you can create an artificial swarm that way, because they will follow almost any queen mandibular pheromone they come across once they've left their hive. So you can get a good sized colony of bees collected to a queen they don't know. Of course, we have to revisit the tree to show that they've given up. They came back. They're in their top bar hive. Now, have you noticed that when you're in your bee yard and things are really active, it sounds like every hive is swarming? So once again, this is a resource hive of nucleus boxes. And I ran over to that really quick. I already had my queen pipe with me because I have several of them. And I caught that queen also on the face of this hive. So I'm taking her away. The whole purpose of this nucleus resource hive is so that I have resources if my other colonies are losing workers, if they're not as robust as I need them to be. I can pull frames of brood, and they still produce more than they need. And I love these queens. Look how dark they are. This year, a lot of these are bees that I've kept in this apiary for, this is the 20th year of beekeeping here. And they're getting darker, and the queens I notice have dark amber bands on their abdomens, and they're just hybrids, they're just mutts. So if somebody's asking what kind of bees are you keeping, this is what they are. They're just cycled back in. I did use bees out of Texas, so the Bee Weaver line years ago, and so there are probably traces of those left, and of course the volume's picking up. The bees are coming back because once again I foiled them. So you can bring in bees, or you can just get queens. If you've got a friend that raises queens, you could come over and of course create your own colony of bees and hive them up. So these are two that I caught right on the face or landing board of the hive. So keep in mind, I'm trying to slow these colonies down because there are just too many bees in them. But I also need to follow up with control of the number of queen cells that are inside now that I've removed their queens, because we don't want a whole series of after swarms that result in a colony that can't survive the coming winter. So we'll later look through, once they're settled, we'll look through all the brood frames and we'll look at the queen cells that are in there and we'll cut those out. So here we go. Two queens. We have to have workers in these two. That's very important. These queens are going to need feed. Now look at this colony. Here's another method of controlling and introducing your queen. So when I collect a swarm off of a tree, and this occurred on the 16th of August, the previous ones were on the 15th, I collected these, shook them off into this bucket. This is guaranteed to have multiple queens in it. But when I put them in the bucket, I of course put this queen excluder over the top of the bucket, and see that little bundle? The queen is in there. So I'm going to show you a method, little kind of grid method that I use with this queen includer. And because you're working by yourself, your hands won't be free. So of course we're going to use this plastic queen pipe again. I have nothing to do with that company. Nobody else is making anything like it, and it's the handiest queen management device I've ever found. So what I'm going to do, of course, is I have to remove this little entrance wheel. And this is a Long Langstroth Hive by Beersville Bees. And again, you know, you want to build your horizontal hives. They're stationary. They're not going to be moved around. Make them as big as possible. See the other end of it? There's a colony in there. So what I've done is I've divided this hive in half with a follower board. And now the second half is on this side. I'm going to create a 2-colony system with this swarm. So the first thing I'm doing is test fitting to make sure this is going to work. I also don't want that vertical piece to go straight over this hole. And I'm going to use a screw and a fender washer, and I'm going to snug it up but not make it absolutely tight. It's just going to be a pivot point, and I'm going to show you how that works. So self-tapping screw, fender washer, and by the way, if you don't put a washer on that, you risk the screw spreading the bars apart and making it too wide for the queen if you did this right next to the entrance. But see, I just pushed down on the left edge there, and I lift it. So I'm going to lift it out of the way. And now I'm going to, of course, demonstrate to you how I turn this over. And remember, the queen is on the underside, inside the bucket of this queen excluder. And I like the ones with the wooden frames around them because it won't slide off the top of my bucket. So you're probably going to get bored looking at these queen pipes. I think they're hilarious because a lot of people have never seen them before. And it's one of the cheapest pieces of useful beekeeping gear you can get. Now I'm going to turn it over. A bunch of bees did fall down inside, but there's a tight cluster over here in the corner. We have to pay attention to that right away. And of course, the queen shows up in that little cluster of bees, and I'm going to get her right there. Sorry, that was just off the view of the camera, but I'm going to show you the queen here. Put the little sponge in. And there she is. Nice and fat. Another one, nice and dark. Probably one of my mutts again. And so all I have to do now is pull the little skinny cork or, mushy material that they give you there. We're going to watch the queen go in. There she goes. Nice big abdomen. and she goes right inside. Now all I have to do, hands free, push that down, and I have a queen includer. So always check your queen pipe, make sure there's not another queen there. Now, one of the reasons I do this is I'm going to let the bees, of course, go inside the hive. They're going to go right through. Drones can't go through. No free meal today for you. And if there are other queens, and I highly suspect there are, because the size of this swarm is just too big for one queen. So what will happen is, if the other queens subsequently try to get inside and join the bees in this Long Langstroth hive, I'll be able to collect them off the face. And that gives me options. I can take a queen from this cluster that's hanging off the bottom of this Long Langstroth, and I can create another colony and put them in another hive. Now the sound you're hearing is I've just dumped the bucket out on the ground. Don't need it anymore. I'm also going to remove that queen excluder off to the right, and then we're just going to have this mass of bees underneath. So we're also going to look at their behavior while they're hanging from this Long Langstroth hive. I'm going to show you what motivator bees look like. I call them cheerleaders. You're also going to see some waggle dancing going on, and that tells me too that they're also deciding there's some place else they'd rather be, but the bulk of these bees are going into this hive. Now keep in mind, I've divided this hive in half, but I really don't think there's enough time left. They have 3 frames of drawn comb in here. The rest of it is all foundation that's heavy waxed, and we're going to watch them build up between now and the end of the year. So this is actually a perfect time to be starting off a second colony if you're just going to keep it small and they still have time to build up and get through winter. So we're going to scan across the bees here. I'll show you their behavior. There's a lot of fanning going on. There's Nasinoff glands. But if you'll also notice, not all the bees are motivated to go in. So they're hanging off the bottom. There's a lot of influencing going on here. Let's look for some waggle dances. And we'll see that they're trying to share information. The waggle dancers, like this one right here, it's a female of course, she scouted out another location, and she's trying to communicate that to the bees that are remaining underneath this hive. So, if the sun were the vertical spot here, she's trying to get them to go left of the sun, which for me is going to be towards the northeast right now. So I don't want them to do that, but I'm also not terribly worried because I do have one queen with a nice long abdomen. I 99% guarantee that she is laying. Now, this is a motivator bee, a cheerleader. So I've slowed it down so that you can see what this behavior looks like. You'll see these bees scooting around, grabbing other bees, and then they vibrate them. And what they're doing is they're saying something's happened, something's changed, and now we need you to stop sitting around and join the rest of the colony. So it also, for some reason, she kind of grips this wheel. There's a whole series of control wheels and entrances down the whole length of this hive. So she does that. She is shoulder bumping the one that's fanning right next to her, but that was kind of interesting. And I wanted you to see, because this happens really fast. And once they've decided, let's say they're in a bucket and you collected a swarm, you'll see these bees scoot around. Once they decide to go into the hive, they'll be grabbing each other and vibrating them into action. At the same time, other bees are at the entrance, fanning their Nasinoff gland and providing the follow-up pheromone endorsement of the hive that they're moving into. So we're going to be turning this Long Langstroth hive into a 2-colony system, and I think that's great. Because on the other side of it, when I put the divider board in, the follower board, they still have about 4 frames that aren't even finished being drawn out yet. So they've got work to do. They might finish that this year, but with this number of bees in this swarm, they're definitely worth hiving in August. So I just wanted you to see that. Cheerleader bees, we have the waggle dancers, and what these cheerleader bees do, which is interesting too, I noticed, they work their way across the bees that are on the face of the hive, vibrating them as they go, but then ultimately they just walk in themselves. So that's good news too. That tells me that she's approving of what I've decided that they can do here. And of course, this is a close-up of them going through the entrance, and you can see that they go through that entrance very easily. Some of you may wonder, what is the gap in this metal queen includer? It is 4.2 millimeters between the bars. So if you're making one of your own, you can also just buy a regular metal queen excluder that you know works well, cut it up to any shape that you want, and use it in this way to make sure that your bees don't abscond once you've put forth all the effort of getting the queen in there. So it's very important. So during this video, I've shown you that you can collect a swarm, find the queen in the bucket on the underside of your queen excluder, and then use the queen to entice the bees from the swarm into the hive. You can also, if you happen to be present when a swarm starts from a hive, get right in front of it and wait for the queen to come out, and when she does, be quick-fingered, nab the queen, and you'll be good to go. And then keep them in with a queen includer. I'm Frederick Dunn. This has been The Way to Be.